Welcome to another Instagram Live for OCD Recovery. I'm going to be talking a little bit today about worrying and what worrying, what happens when we remove the word anxiety and we replace it with worrying. What happens so often is that people say things like this. They say, "Oh, I'm anxious because for no reason, I had a thought and I just feel anxious right now." And the problem with that is that people then think it's anxiety is doing it to them. Now that's a big problem because it then feels completely out of our control, and we think, oh, there's nothing we can do. This is being done to us, like an outside force of some sort doing this to us, and that's not the case at all. So it's very important to replace the word anxiety with worrying sometimes, so you can see that where we have the control over it. So let me take, for example, say with a fear of what if I had an HIV thought, for example, then it's very easy to think, why am I feeling anxiety relating to that? It's just coming on. Well, it isn't just coming on. What's actually happening is that you've got a situation where you are concerned, you're worried about the idea of A, having HIV, or two, worrying that having the thought of HIV is a problem. And so both of those is happening there. Now, beliefs are very subtle. You don't notice them straight away. And when you notice it, you won't notice it. You'll just feel the anxiety. So when we replace worrying, we say, okay, well, I'm worrying about having HIV. I'm worrying about having a thought of having HIV. I might have to move because it's a bit noisy in the background here. So then if you say I'm worrying about having a thought about HIV, I'm worrying about having HIV, then you can see that you've got the control over that situation, and that gets rid of that problem very quickly, to show us that it's actually us that where the problem's happening. And so I think that's really important for a lot of people, because it's so easy, especially with generalized anxiety disorder, which when people have generalized anxiety disorder, they've got chronic state of anxiety that's going on all the time in the background, like a sort of secondary anxiety. And when that's happening, the problem with that is that secondary anxiety cycle is playing out, and the sufferer thinks, this is out of my control, that there's nothing that I can do, because they're feeling the physical symptoms. And when they're feeling those physical symptoms, what happens is they think, okay, because I'm feeling physical symptoms right now, this is happening to me outside of my control. I'm not worrying about anything. I'm not afraid of anything, and it's still happening. Therefore, there's something broken. There's something wrong with my brain. There's something default that's causing that, when there actually isn't anything causing that at all. So that's a large part of the problem with all of that. Even with generalized anxiety disorder, a sufferer can look and notice and go, okay, well, I don't think I'm worrying about anything, but am I worrying that I'm worrying, or worried that I'm feeling anxiety, or worried that I'm feeling physical sensations, or worried that I'm trapped like that? And usually when you actually go down through that and go through those things, you'll find out, yeah, absolutely, that's exactly what is happening. You are worried that you're trapped like that forever. That's a large part of the problem. Worried that you're stuck like that and that's never ever going to go. Worried that you're going to be locked in that cycle forever. That is what's driving it. That's what's fueling it. Because if there was nothing that you were worried about whatsoever, you wouldn't have those symptoms. Yes, you might have sensitized nerves. Yes, you may still feel anxious, that's still playing out in your head. Yes, that may be the case, but you won't have that. You would have a chronic anxiety that would still be there gradually, but it's you're interacting with it. It's you're wanting it gone. You're hating of it. You're not wanting it to be there whatsoever. That's what's fueling it, driving it, keeping it going constantly. That's the problem with it. So it's Claire Weekes, one of the pioneers of anxiety, put it in a very good way. And she put it in a way that she was saying that let time pass, let the nervous system settle. Now, it's not just the sensitized nerves that are playing out that keep the anxiety symptoms going in the cases of OCD, panic disorder, any of this. It's a combination of things. One, you've got the brain that's remembering a certain thing, a feeling, a certain fear, a certain cycle, and therefore it's replaying that because it's refueling it, resparking it every single time it senses that, which can be all the time, keeping it going as a loop. Or it can be, again, feelings and sensations, the nervous system for a long time being fired up. Same as if you had an injured knee and you tried jogging on it every day and expecting it to recover, to get better. It wouldn't get better just from jumping on that knee all the time. It would need rest. And that's very much the same with the sensitized nerve situation. So we've got a situation both there with the brain refiring it, keeping it going constantly, the nervous system that's playing out over and over. And then what you've also got is you've got time in terms of everything settling down, leaving the body to heal, leaving the brain to sort of get rebalanced again with things. Especially like, so OCD is not so much a subconscious, there's not really much need of the subconscious, not knowledge of that in relation to OCD. It's pretty in the forefront most of the time. Yes, there can be worries, scared of worrying about worrying, that can still be there at some subconscious level, hence why it's hitting us in dreams and all this all the time. But that's not all so much to do with subconscious. Even when it's in dreams, it's mainly to do with our fear of a certain thing right now. And people can then get scared. Oh, what if it's in subconscious? What if I can't reach it? Well, I can't get it. It's not the case like that with OCD. With generalized anxiety disorder and PTSD, very much more it's subconscious, and it needs more time to play out and accepting the feelings, or learning to accept the feared thing that you can see. It doesn't need, often as so much people used to think, oh, you need to go right back into the past and look at so many different things. It doesn't need that. You don't need to go that far back. You're not going to suddenly go back 20 years and look at how your mum treated you and suddenly all your anxiety is going to go, because there'll be a fear currently that you'll be able to spot that's relating to something. It could be relating to that, but you'll be aware of that. So it's a case of time is one of your biggest factors. Leaving it be is another factor. Seeing what you're scared of. If you're scared of something, that's why it's playing out. You know, for me, with harm OCD, it didn't settle until I got to a position where I was much more accepting of, even if in real life I had committed harm, because it wouldn't let me off the hook. It would just keep replaying. Now, for a lot of people, they can live with the uncertainty, and that's fine. A lot of brains can do that, but not all. A lot of people's situations, which is, I would say, probably the majority, in a lot of harm OCD cases, until they become fully a lot more accepting towards unconditional self-acceptance of themselves if they made mistakes in life in a lot more ways, it doesn't tend to settle down. It tends to keep playing along. It might go down drastically with living with uncertainty and living in the moment, but it tends to niggle in there and keep playing. And only when I could really see that, it felt, I'm off the hook. No, not off the hook, but I'm off the hook of OCD, not let off the hook as in a wrong act, but okay, I did a wrong act, I'm a fallible human being, and learning to accept myself. I could accept myself, I could accept someone else if they did that. That wouldn't be the whole of me destroyed by one act, which OCD tries to claim it is. And by doing that, it released its hook, it released its grip, and that was a main turning point. Now let me have a look at these questions, see if there's anything on here to cover today. Let's have a look. I found it helpful to think of the OCD thoughts as something inside my head that is the ability to vocalize things, but all that it says is completely distorted and not worth listening to. Absolutely, that is what OCD is going to do. It's going to distort things, and it's good being able to do that. Now, a lot of that is what it's a lot about, looking at it as a separate voice, a separate thing. It's not us, doesn't represent us in any way. So that's a hugely important thing. However, what you want to think about is that you've got to ask yourself, if you've been doing that a long time, are you still feeling anxious a lot of the time? Is chronic anxiety still playing? Because if it is, there is still a bit more work to do, but it may settle with leaving uncertainty there and leaving. But if it's still biting, then we need to look at what you're frightened of, what you're not accepting, what you're not really making peace with. Acceptance is an internal surrendering. It's not giving up. It's giving up the fight and acknowledging what is. And that's a crucial part of what it's about. Dean there, uncertainty and being in the present just doesn't seem to cut it. Yeah, uncertainty and being in the present with harm OCD, POCD doesn't seem to cut it. What will happen is the individual it will stay locked on. They still feel utterly convinced they're a paedophile, murderer, rapist, whatever, and they'll feel like, no, this is real. The brain just won't take that risk to say, it's okay, you're all right. It just won't move there. It just keeps replaying, and it will just make it as in that time was real, lock on, and then be in a position where it's convincing you this is absolutely 100% real. That is what it's going to do. That's how it locks in, and that's how it plays out. And it will always, it can convince me at any point today. I'll go, oh, you just really definitely did do that, and you can't tell the difference between it not being just being OCD. It hijacks what you care about the most. This is important. Yeah, absolutely. It's hijacking the things that you care about most. And but also be careful there with what it hijacks. It can then hijack you the other way, going, well, you weren't anxious about that, so therefore you don't care, and you don't think you do care about that the most. So don't use emotions, feelings, or anything as signals of wrongdoing. Chronic guilt is not as an indication of wrongdoing. Chronic physical anxiety is not an indication of no anxiety. Not feeling anxiety because of something is not indication of agreement with something. We can't test our internal emotional state constantly with an imaginary thermometer over and over, and that's what OCD sufferers are doing, taking an indication on that reading and then going, that means XYZ. We can't do that. Doesn't make sense. My harm OCD changed to a fear of being schizophrenic after I convinced myself I wasn't that kind of a person, all because I had read about a dangerous schizophrenic person. Well, the harm OCD hasn't gone. You're still scared of causing harm. You're scared of causing harm if you were schizophrenic. It was out of your control, a super common one. So that's what needs targeting. It's harm related to being schizophrenic, or like say multiple personality, or any way it can convince you that you're going to lash out and do something. Been listening to Dr. Claire Weeks a lot lately. I know you've mentioned her in the past, Rob. She speaks a lot about acceptance. She's very knowledgeable. Yes, Claire Weeks is an absolute game changer, a pioneer for anxiety, way before her times. Probably one of the most significant, if not the most significant person in anxiety treatment in the last 100 years, in terms of specific to anxiety. But I would say that Albert Ellis, the founder of CBT, obviously he provides all the tools that gets under everything. So I would say that he's the most significant person in terms of emotion, of fixing anxiety, depression, anything like that. He was the game changer for everything. But for anxiety, Claire Weeks overall, fantastic depth into anxiety. She doesn't go into enough detail for OCD. You'll need Albert Ellis for a lot of things to get right under it, because she a lot of the time the stuff she does covers mainly panic. It covers all of them in the majority, but OCD tends to linger, as I was talking there about POCD and harm OCD. You need to get under it with Ellis's, the founder of CBT's work, to really get underneath that, and that is what is needed. And just to highlight something else, trying to recover with OCD with just books is very, 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 very difficult. Trying to recover with just this account and this account alone and books is difficult. Okay, if I hadn't had therapy, specialist OCD therapy at the time, although it covered the majority of things that were very helpful to me, it didn't cover to the extent that I needed. Then I had to do a lot of reading, a lot of practice. It laid a lot of the foundations, absolutely 100%, and was significant to me getting better. But then I needed to do a lot of reading, a lot more exposures. So can people recover without any therapy? Yes, very difficult in terms of contamination. combination OCD and stuff like that. It depends on the theme. Sometimes somebody can recover with just reading, and this account, absolutely, I see it all the time, people doing that. But when it's really under there, locked in, you need someone to really help you and get under it, because it can come from it can be complicated how it's trying to get you, and it needs a lot of things done to help it. Hence why I'm writing a book on OCD at the moment, and why I spend so long doing coaching and group coaching, because there's so much to get in underneath. So it's very important. You know, when I went from therapist to therapist for a long time, then I went to a very good OCD specialist at the time before they retired, that helped me a lot with laying out a lot of the foundations. Then I went to work with that centre and became a motivational speaker for that centre for years. And she was a game changer at the time for what she was doing with OCD. And what she did was an incredible part of laying a lot of the foundations to get me better. And it covered extensively the things that I needed in terms of learning about Ellis, learning about mindfulness, learning about uncertainty. And that was really important, because I didn't even know who Ellis was at that time. And then what happened was, then by studying Greek and Roman philosophy, Stoicism in particular, which laid the foundations for the creation of CBT with Albert Ellis, Claire Weeks extensively, not something that was covered in my journey in terms of getting better through therapy of any format, but a lot of Claire Weeks was significant in understanding that. Someone that I'd come across through a lot of forums, not something that I really advocate massively, because they tend to be cycles of reassurance and a lot of negativity a lot of the time. But in where I read many good forum posts, they were always advocating Claire Weeks. So I spent a long time reading about her, likes of Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, which is all on my reading list pinned to the top of this Instagram page. That whole collective is what got underneath and got me better over time with lots and lots of practice. I would say that if you're trying to do it on your own, it is very difficult, because if it was, the problem is we want to stay within the comfort zone. So we want to read just on Instagram. That's nice, swiping, reading a book, browsing a book, nice and comfortable. That's not uncomfortable. You've got to put yourself in very uncomfortable to get better. And that involves lots of exposures, difficult shame attack, lots of things that are needed. You don't always need all of those to get better, and often you don't. But a lot of that is needed, and people don't push themselves doing that, and they don't know how to do that. And so that's why having coaching, for example, with myself, doing the groups and the one-to-one specifically is designed to get into that, so we cover all areas. Let's just have a look and see if there's any other questions here. It's never going to make you lash out, right? Well, that's a reassurance question. And as you know, by following this account, I don't do reassurance. Intrusive sexual thoughts towards family members have come up since my ROCD has gotten managed lately. Am I right to see these as related? Sexual thoughts towards family members tends to be usually, again, relating to harm OCD, situations like that, or just thoughts doing something that you don't want to do, something that you would regard yourself as terrible in one manner or another in relation to that. It's all interconnected. It doesn't matter about which theme is which. They all overlap. It's about what the specific fears are there and breaking those down. Does OCD run in your family? My parents don't understand the severity of my OCD, and they tell me just to toughen up. Toughen up don't work. If it did, people would just tell you and you'd be better, and it certainly doesn't. I see many families saying that to kids all the time that are trying everything to get better from OCD. Toughen up doesn't work. Forget it. If you're a parent listening or watching it, it's absolute crap to be telling people that. The same as snap out of it. It doesn't do anything. Does OCD run in families? Yes, OCD does run in families. It is often very common biological component, which means it can be in siblings and in parents, very common. Albert Ellis, yes, the founder of CBT. Albert Ellis was one founder of CBT. Yes, the other founder was Aaron Beck. As much as I liked Aaron Beck and was significant in the creation of CBT, I didn't find his books and the stuff that he was talking about as, although targeting in the way, obviously by creating CBT and targeting anxiety, I found the way that Albert Ellis spoke to me a lot more. I liked the way he did it. I liked the way he broke it down with the real rational side. You know, he brought in the component of rational emotive behaviour therapy, which was RET, rational emotive therapy, into which formed CBT. I loved that, and I still that's the rational emotive behaviour therapy and everything to do with rational, coming from the Stoics, like the likes of Marcus Aurelius Seneca, the younger, Epictetus, Diogenes, all these characters from Greek and Roman philosophy, and seeing how they saw things. And it was our perspectives on life when we think irrationally that creates anxiety and fuels anxiety, and when we think rationally it brings that down. And that's that's what I loved, and that's everything that I'm about, seeing things rationally, seeing things for what they are, seeing things scientifically, seeing how things make sense. And it's only when we go really irrational we get ourselves disturbed. Can I ask about private sessions with you? Yes, for private sessions, if you just direct message me above, up in the top corner, or if you email info@ocdrecovery.com, I can always be reached on there. Can you do a chat on skin picking? Skin picking is very common, something that I've had, so many people have, but it often gets unnoticed, becomes like an addiction, where until you completely stop it at the core, it just keeps going on like a cycle. Yes, I can absolutely cover that. I will cover that in another session, in another Instagram. Okay, fine, guys. That was just going to be a quick Instagram live today. For those of you that might have seen earlier on Instagram stories, I've set up an OCD recovery group as well on Facebook, which is a free group just as a support group chat, not a specific coaching chat like our WhatsApp group chats and the group one-to-one Skype sessions. But there's a general support chat on Facebook now. If you go on the OCD recovery page and go to groups, you'll see it there, the OCD recovery group, which is what I'm building up into a support community for people around the world who can't afford to have coaching or anything like that with me, but they've got a support chat with other people, and I will be going in there from time to time, directing, helping people in the form of support, not in the form of direct coaching, but helping out in there. So that's something definitely to get involved with. Do you personally suffer from any other conditions aside from anxiety and OCD? Not mental health conditions, injuries that I've had over the years. Anything else? Don't think so. I had bad gastroesophageal reflux disorder, which is something that's super common with anxiety, flared up by anxiety. I still get that. My father's got that, so that's a genetic condition, which was obviously really worsened by anxiety when I was really suffering. Apart from that, no, pretty healthy otherwise. No other problems. I feel sometimes our brains don't compute rational things, as often OCD defies logic and reasoning sometimes. It's hard to believe what's actually true, if that makes sense. Yeah, look, you apply the rational to the majority of things where it's really sticky, it's locked on and something like that. But if it's like an existential thought about aliens abducting you in the future, yes, the rational can still be applied, and can show you how that works. However, most of the time with that, we're leaving it with uncertainty. It's just uncertainty does not cut it for a lot of things. It doesn't cut it for POCD and harm OCD a lot of the time. You have to get right under it. It just doesn't release its grip. So it's important that we do have a good understanding of rational thinking, as well as a good understanding of uncertainty and how that operates. Okay, guys, thanks a lot for tuning in, and I will be back up maybe later today. I was mentioning at the end of Instagram Live last night that I want to cover specifically all about the stomach problems, gastroesophageal reflux disorder, LPR, silent reflux disorder, laryngeal reflux, airway reflux. I want to talk about stomach pains, gastroenteritis, PPIs, proton pump inhibitors, all for calming, for stopping acid production in the stomach, being on those long term, being on those short term, everything to do with concerns relating to stomach issues, because the stomach is so susceptible to anxiety signals activating it. So I'll be covering that extensively, so you can see all about stomach issues relating to anxiety. And I'm going to be doing a lot more videos talking about individual body parts and what effects anxiety can have, and what anxiety can do to those, and what happens, and what's involved, and what meds people take for that, and just general anxiety related things specific to different body situations. Okay, guys, thanks a lot. I'll speak to you later.